All right, it's live now.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am super excited to have Vernon with us today. Most of you who operate in the Salesforce ecosystem are probably very familiar with Vernon. He's been a guiding light to so many of us and definitely a thought leader in this space. Deeply connected right there in the Bay Area next to the mothership. So someone we all love and adore. So I'm going to turn it over to Vernon to give a quick intro about himself and what he's doing at Keenan Vision. Go for it, Vernon.
Oh, thank you so much. Welcome everybody to our gathering today, and to the GPTfy crew and everybody for putting on this show, because I know it's so hard to put on a live stream. My goodness. And here we are. How many days are we until Dreamforce?
About 10 days.
10 days. Oh boy. So thank you so much. And just want to tell a little bit about Keenan Vision. Is the consultancy that I've been running for years, kind of alongside Salesforce DevOps.net. So, I would get a consulting gig to go along with that. But we recently got a large engagement with Salesforce themselves. So that's kind of allowed us to spread our wings a little bit. And I've managed to hire two people that I'm sure many here know. And that's Chris Pearson and also John Robinson. And both of them have come on as managers and analysts to an additional analyst to Keenan Vision. John's looking at the testing field in depth, and he's coming out with a report at Dreamforce. So we did that. And then the big thing was I was able to hire a team of researchers, starting with Associate Professor Abhishek Najarag from UC Berkeley Haas. And he's an economist and also teaches there in the MBA program all about AI. He's their AI specialist there. And he, along with two of his former students, Alicia Wall and Stanley Choi, both of them, the three of them together, have just completed a tremendous research study into enterprise AI. Wow. And that is basically allowed Keenan Vision to have, to spread our wings a little bit. And we're doing more consulting, and hopefully Salesforce DevOps.net is due for an overhaul soon. So that's the news there.
That's great. That's wonderful. So, I mean, given all the incredible amount of intellectual horsepower here, I want to ask you the question that's been on the mind of a lot of people, particularly in the Salesforce world. This stat is getting tossed around that 95% of AI projects seem to be failing. Mm-hmm. What's going on, Vernon? What's your perspective on it? And how can Salesforce customers do better?
Well, yes, it's probably true. And in our study, we didn't actually find many people outside of a couple of Salesforce reference accounts, namely Equinox. We talked to the Equinox guys. And outside of them, we couldn't find anybody who had gone to production with their product. And we found in that, actually, we found like four main reasons why this is happening, I think. The first one is what we call CEO FOMO. So this is when the board or the CEO or maybe the CIO says, hey guys, we got to do AI. We got to get it done. I got to tell the board we're doing AI. I don't care what you do, just get that POC going, and I want to see it working. And that never works, basically. So we saw a scramble happening at like a Fortune 100 company where people were doing that. We also saw it happening at smaller companies, more like Fortune 1000 type companies. And we also, so that's definitely something that's not good. And then the other thing we noticed is part of that is because of terrible skills shortage.
Hmm.
And there's really at all levels. And you starting from the CEO on down, and you say, well, what does the CEO need to know about AI? Well, here's one thing CEO needs to know is that we encountered a major deficit in CEO level thinking, which creates something called the inability to attain activation energy on your project. So we talked to like a big bank, a national bank that you would know, and they had very high Salesforce data gravity, meaning that this CIO said, I'd be an idiot not to use Agentforce for this project because all my data lives in Salesforce. So that I think that people are kind of compelled maybe to use Agentforce for this is for a customer CX application, which by the way is the number one application out there is CX. Mm-hmm. And so he had very high data gravity, did the Agentforce thing, used a great integrator to help him do it. They're ready to go. They're at this activation energy curve, but they can't hit over it because at the very top is governance. And they got stuck there because their governance unit doesn't know how to evaluate them. So they're stuck because they need time to understand what's going on before they can turn this thing loose on a customer at a bank.
Wow.
So that's why the CEO needs AI education, is because you need CEO level leadership to get through activation energy. And then we see also skill shortages are rampant. There's a big difference. Here's the way I would make the difference between enterprise AI and desktop AI or personal AI that we're all very fun and good at. Enterprise AI involves having a platform where things are programmatically happening. And they have, there's a sequence of things going on, and there's like, workflow and that kind of stuff. And people don't understand that aspect of AI. And to be taught that is usually by a vendor. So it's Salesforce, Agentforce version of that, or it's AWS Bedrock version of that, or it's Azure whatever, or Vertex from Google, or whatever. So you get, and the other thing is that is just what those guys are thinking about today in the Wild West of the AI thing growing and everything. So there's no like first principles education going on on AI. It's all vendor led. So we see that as a deficit too. And the other thing, I got more. The vendors are lying. There's a promise and reality gap. Huge one. So like for Salesforce customers, there's a lot of ifs. It's like, if you have customer 360, if your data is clean, if you have data cloud, if you know how to use data cloud, then you have what I call enterprise composability. So that you can pull in all the different parts of your enterprise into one context and have that, be the thing that is used to do a prompt or an agent or something like that. So if you have all that, that's like 5 ifs all put together, then Agentforce is beautiful. And that's where you hear about all these reference accounts that are starting to work. So, and we could see that. We saw that at Equinox. So it's harsh to say that Agentforce doesn't work. because it can. It's just a lot of ifs involved to get the right activation energy.
So if I recap what I've heard, Vernon, and thank you, by the way, this is really insightful. So you mentioned about 4 or 5 factors. Number one, involvement at the leadership level, right? Number two is the availability of skills internally, at least some degree of understanding of the beast you are about to try and tame, right? The
Right,
third,
right. To
right.
understand the capabilities.
Correct, correct. The third that I heard is really, and I love that term, data gravity, and how significantly, how strategic is Salesforce as part of your larger enterprise ecosystem, and the value you can derive out of all the data sitting in there. And the fourth is enterprise composability, which I again love the term. And basically, do you have an MDM type capability, what Salesforce's CDP or data cloud and things like that, right? You can do
Right.
identity resolution. So you basically have to have the right mix of these things to really benefit from AI. And the caveat you mentioned, which is vendors are lying.
The promise reality gap, let's call it that,
True.
is the especially when you have people out there trying to sell Agent Force as an add-on. You know, it's not built in. So you gotta they're out there trying to sell that. And I think the other thing I'd like to mention is that and this is a whole nother discussion, is the reliance on SIs and consultants can be quite detrimental sometimes, I think. The reason being that you need to have what's called a capability to understand AI on this platform level. So you need to kind of get your feet wet with one of these, agent platform doohickeys like GPTfy, just for example. So because if someone's like dipping into using AI in this way, in even seemingly trivial ways, it really opens up your mind in terms of capabilities and to understand, what you can actually do with it. Because it's really the individual contributors and the subject matter experts within your organization are the ones who need to understand this.
Yeah, that I think is really interesting you mentioned that, because, as you mentioned about customers going to production, we have some very interesting use cases where customers have gone to production, both on the support side and sales side. And it's almost always been a few people in those organizations who were the torch bearers, who did the POC, the pilot, who really understood the nitty gritties of what they're about to embark on. And given the nature of generative AI, it's it's not like software as usual. It's not like I'm building an e-commerce platform, or like I'm doing
No.
or CPQ. It's a very different kind of beast.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different platform, all right. I mean, you have to understand how to use it at that level, treat it. And we don't really know, honestly, how we're going to treat it at the end, because a lot of the artifices we put in now to make things work are kind of like being built into the next version of the model, all the time. So it's such an evolution right now.
Yeah. So given that, that's a great illustration of the pain point that I'm also hearing across the board from customers, not only like Fortune 500, but also in the mid-size segment. It is quite pronounced. Like everybody wants to do it. They are kind of reading about it and all of this very impressive stuff, but they're just kind of struggling with how do we actually realize the value of AI. So what can Salesforce customers particularly do better, in your opinion, Vernon? And what's the sort of
Mhm.
path to the promised land here?
Well, here's one interesting thing we talked to. We talked to actually, this story came out of a mutual friend, Elements Cloud, who was part of our study, and they're recently part of Salesforce Reference on using Agentforce. And they managed to create agents that did like HR things for them, or like office things for them. And they kind of personified these agents to some degree, and kind of fulfilled almost my vision of the virtual employee with it a little bit, where it fulfilled a role in the organization, and that was sufficient ROI for them. So it's like if you add a new, 24/7 HR agent to your office, what's the ROI on that? How do you measure it? Well, at some level, it's just there, and that's great. It's like, wouldn't it be great if you could hire somebody to do that? So what is the fractional value of hiring somebody full time to do that? It's like 1/100th, obviously, or something low, but it's still there. So I think there is some of that going on. I think that you can look at role replacement or role and new role, adding new roles with AI teammates or something like that is one way, is a new way I've seen.
What like I can share a little bit of what I'm seeing with other customers and
Yeah.
see if that makes sense. Back to what you were saying, the lack of internal experience. I think it's a profoundly important aspect, and a way to get around it is to do something really small but very very clear, very sort of a direct use case. Preferably something that is more internal, like the HR example you gave, versus like I have a chatbot on a website, so that you have enough confidence you can build, you can wet your feet a little bit, and then progressively build upon that, open it to your partners and sort of the people who are within your sort of broader organizational circle of trust, and then eventually open it out to customer. That could be one way to doing it, but predominantly start small and then eventually build on that is what I've seen with the winners, if you will. And I've spoken with a lot of customers who just want to boil the ocean with AI, and I have not seen much meaningful progress there. Are you finding that in your study?
Yeah, we found that for sure. I mean, that's like the antidote to the CEO FOMO, basically. Because CEO FOMO is the opposite of that. So you're talking about some guy just using GPTfy to enhance a workflow or to make something easier, and just use the document processing capabilities or something to just do something easier, and then he learns how to do it, and then he looks around, and then maybe he says, maybe this agent stuff I'm hearing about could do this process, and then that's the whole grassroots thing. Yeah, for sure. And smart managers should figure out how to encourage that type of thing. The common prescription is a hackathon in a large company or something to try to bring those people out. But or Skunk Works, where you might find people where you would invite, again, this would be a very large company, like 10,000 employees, that has kind of like the center of excellence type resources or something like that to
Yeah. So typically, like, again, mid to large, so about 5,000 to maybe 50, 60,000 employee. I've seen this across the board. Hackathons in general, I've found, have not been very successful. This is just my opinion.
That's why I said the common prescription is that. I don't know if it's
true. So like POCs or pilots that may be like, generate an account 360 for my account, help me do account planning, because like we integrate with Microsoft Copilot as well. So you can just run it from Copilot, bring data from Salesforce, generate out an account plan, or you're doing call logging with voice, right? Kind of like the use cases, but internally focused for sales or for, CSM and things like that. And then eventually kind of broaden it out, invest significantly more once you have built enough internal competence and also trust, because like you mentioned, you try to do even tiny little thing in a 50,000 employee company, you have governance, you have AI COE, you have enterprise architecture review board. So you have to, even for that tiny little thing, the good news is you will run into a lot of internal constraints, and you will pour the foundation, versus the bank example you give, where it is like you've invested so much in a very waterfall style model, and bam, you run into governance, and this thing is kind of, there's a failure to launch.
Oh yeah, and that's going to happen all the time at big companies or certain industries. So that's something to be aware of. I think one other thing in our study I'd like to give people a thing to think about is kind of we came up with a taxonomy or a way to describe applications that you might choose for your solutions, and GPTfy is like a great example of what we call an overlay AI application, meaning that you have an architecture where you're flexible. You can work with any kind of substrate, so to speak, source of data, context, or whatever, and then you even have a bring your own key thing, which is remarkable. People love that. So that you could use your own Vertex or whatever as your setup to do that, and so that you have, that's like a very optimal way to do that, to do AI processing from an efficiency perspective, because you're controlling all the tokens, you're doing all that kind of stuff, and you can have really fine control of it. And that's kind of versus the agent force in a way. I think GPTfy is a great alternative if you're not ready to turn the key on agent force, because agent force is like a whole thing, right? There's hesitation because of cost and governance, and the fact you're doing a thing to an org that might have thousands of people on it, and all that. Even though there is, I must say, there's the developer org, and you can play around with it on your own for free. So that's not a barrier if you're a developer. So I think agent force is out there, but you can just imagine if 5 years from now, somehow all of the overlay apps, and not just GPTfy, but they just kind of like spread around all over the place, there's going to be a reaction to that. And it's kind of like how in the industry there's always like a bundling and unbundling phase we're going through as an industry. Well, right now we're unbundling. So you're getting apps like GPTfy, Decagon, Maven AGI, Sierra, and a whole bunch of others, like 100 others like that, that people are using to get immediate value out of AI by having systems that can connect to different parts of their existing data architecture. So they don't have to do all the activation energy and worry about data gravity and all that other kind of stuff too. So that's why the overlays right now are popular.
True. Very well said. I think there's a use case, for either of these approaches, overlay versus an embedded, type solution. And I think customers are just trying to figure out which is the right path for them. And I actually think that they're both extremely legitimate options. Just figuring out the use case is where I think a lot of people that I speak with are. I'm curious, Vernon, what does our favorite guy think about all of this? Like, what's Mark's vision?
Oh, it's Mark's POV on which particular angle?
Generally, enterprise AI and how it's evolving. I'm sure we'll hear in Dreamforce, but give us a sneak peek.
Sneak peek is a lot of slack, I think. So I think they want to try to create a Slack as the agentic OS.
Yeah.
And then have Agentforce be able to deploy Agentforce stuff through Slack. Kind of like how I described. Another thing too is ITSM or ESM. So they're gonna they're well. What do you think? What do you think if they were to come out with an ITSM product?
I thought it was in the news, right?
Uh-huh.
They're trying
What do
to
you think about that? Do you
compete with Service Now, because I think Service Now is definitely coming from that perspective. So I read that in the news recently. But back to your comment on Slack, I actually completely agree. I think
Mm,
evolution of in general of enterprise apps, not just Salesforce or SAP or like all of them, I think the way this is headed is that as users we are kind of gravitating towards one unified interface, which could be Claude and MCP servers or Chat GPT, or if it was Slack or Microsoft Teams, those can be, or whatever Google is. I can't even tell what Google does in the collaboration space. But whatever these interaction models are, this is where I think there is so much power. Like, we are also Microsoft ISV now, and as we are integrating and we are working with Slack also, kind of
mhm,
integrating and seeing how it can work. I think the user is going there, right? We have to take AI to where the user is at, right? If you're in sales and all your work is getting done in Slack and emails, that's where all the vendors, whether it's Salesforce or GPTfy or anybody else, we have to take AI to that point of
mhm.
consumption and make it easier for our end users. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. But talk a little bit more about what you were saying. I kind of cut you there a little bit.
Oh no, I love that Slack business. That's long overdue in my view. Really, missed opportunity. Up until now, I think I think there are people in the community that aren't that happy about Slack Salesforce integration. Really,
Oh,
seems behind the times, don't you think? I think considering how long it's been going on, I would rather, it's going to be one of the keynote presentations will be Brad Lightfoot from OpenAI, or Lightcap, I guess. Brad Lightcap from OpenAI is the COO, and they run OpenAI on Slack. So he's going to be talking about that with Mark. Mark will be interviewing him about that, I know, in the keynote. So that should be interesting. The keynote's going to have Mark is right now running around the country doing interviews with the guy, the head of FedEx or whatever, to talk about how they're using Agentforce. So that's going to be a lot of the keynote will be them talking about that. And I think I'm hoping to see more things about the community too. I don't, it's always been my mission to try to make sure that the leadership team understands how the community is pissed off and stuff. But it's there's a problem, right? Because the whole Trailblazer community is kind of shrinking a little bit because of all kinds of reasons.
yeah.
So like Salesforce, the Dreamforce never rebounded, right? Attendance wise after COVID, when a lot of other shows like AWS and so forth did. So it's there's a lot of challenges, and I hope that they have something as a more hopeful message for people who are concerned about workforce issues and concerned about the fact that it's hard to get a job in the Salesforce ecosystem right now.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a lot of struggle. I see a lot of open to work, a lot of posts from people who are struggling. They went in because there was this wave where it was just an incredible way to make a career, and right now a lot of those folks are struggling. So that's definitely very hurtful to see, because I don't know of a more vibrant community than the one Salesforce has created. Like, I used to work there. I absolutely love the passion people have for Salesforce and Trailblazers and all of that. And Like, can you imagine somebody doing it for like an Oracle or SAP? I mean, it's just you do not see that kind of fervor that Salesforce was able, has been able to generate for more than a decade now.
Well, right. So it's the challenge, I think, for them to keep that up because one thing, I mean, like another part of my practice is to look at the DevOps space, right? And how automation is coming into things like um, admin tasks and release management tasks. And basically, there's a whole crop of stuff, including that. What do we call it? Agent Force Vibes
Yes.
that just came out. That thing comes with an MCP server that does all kinds of release management tasks. So the whole way to describe it is the whole activity is being compressed with automation right now. So there's that negative factor on the Trailblazer community, and then I think AI is a factor on them on entry level jobs, and I think also corporate downsizing in North America and EMEA probably same thing. All the growth is coming out of Asia Pac and South Asia and Japan.
True, true. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing that too. I was in India a few weeks ago and I was surprised at the sheer scale of Salesforce customers there. They're like massively huge Salesforce customers. I mean, India and China also tend to have the numbers, right? You're not going to find, like half a, 300,000, 300 million insurance policies or accounts anywhere else in the world other than maybe India and China.
Oh, right.
So
Right.
if
The
you're
consumer services for those countries are unbelievable.
right, so if you are a large bank in South Asia, Southeast Asia somewhere, if you are a large insurance provider or telecom like Reliance and others, they are massively huge organizations. And what I love when I was at Salesforce, I know there was a ton of work about almost 10 years ago now. There was a ton of work to build more scalability in the platform, and then Hyperforce and everything came. And today when I think about these geographies, I don't see a better solution than Salesforce, given
Hmm.
the technical of awareness, the capabilities that are so plentifully available, and the again just the set of capabilities. Even like our flagship products like Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, they're brilliant solutions to solve the problems that a lot of these customers have. Sorry, my passion for Salesforce is showing here. Uh,
Well, that's okay. It's interesting to think about it in as a global platform too. There aren't many global platforms like that, and I know the Indian community is huge. Capato just opened an office there. I interviewed the new director of that office, and they just had their own conference, Capato Con or whatever. They're going to start having that regularly over there, and they had hundreds and hundreds of people come to that. And I hear DevOps is up too because of AI-driven transformations. People are doing more DevOps.
True.
So that's all happening.
Great. So I know we're almost coming to a close. Vernon, one last question I have is, you talked a little bit about the framework for success that your study is,
Mhm.
has found or come up with. So maybe talk for a few minutes about that for our audience, please.
Oh, I think, well, in our study, we have 9. I mean, it's kind of, you might expect it from the Haas MBA authors of the study that we kind of have a little MBA like checkoff list. And I think the things that lets you, it gives you a formula and a framework for making a decision to think about it. And also helps you kind of, the other thing is the overlay embedded taxonomy to kind of understand the type of decisions that a certain product is making you have? What are the implications of picking an overlay product versus picking an embedded strategy to do that? So I think what I would do in the short time that we have is not bore you with that list of MBA topics, but refer you to the KeenanVision.net website, which next week we'll be publishing our study, and you can go over there or just stay tuned to my LinkedIn, which is I'm sure most people are on that, and see me on LinkedIn. And next week we'll be publishing our study proudly, and people can take a look for themselves. And we're going to have a whole series of blog articles and follow up to do with that, and continue our work. The next topic we're studying is forward deployed engineers.
That is very interesting. If you're up for it, I would love for us to, pick this up in a future conversation on both the FDE, but also more. I'm very curious to hear about the 9 MBA factors.
9 MBA factors. I would probably maybe even let Stanley do that lecture. So. Or Abhishek, even better.
Sounds
See if
like
we can get Abhishek on the line here. He's our professor.
That would be great. Let's do that. I think
let's see if we can get we can have we can have more than 2 of us, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think also because when I talk to customers, and I have a call actually in another 11, 12, 21 minutes here. When I talk to customers, it's always this, right? They're all trying to figure out how do we balance moving forward with AI without betting the farm, without making the kind of mistakes. Like everybody's kind of very worried about the buyer's regret in terms of like, oh, I just signed up with this, and now there is this nicer, newer, better capability with some LLM.
Here's my advice for that client. So I think the thing we talked about earlier, capability development, kind of like at the grassroots and maybe even at the CEO level, is important. But the thing that is most important is for the CEO to understand the capabilities, and then to try to align that with some sort of nagging problem or barrier that has been unsolvable. Like what if I could actually take a customer call from everybody? Or what if what ifs are there out there? And I think you need to think about that, because if you don't, that's where your competition is going to come in and think about things like that. And that's where AI is going to really hurt you in a few years if you're not thinking transformationally. So I think that's really important. That's why we emphasize the CEO level education, to kind of understand it and beyond how a prompt works, like understanding these platforms and what they're doing and what context building means. It's essential skills.
Very well said. Very well said, Ronan. On that note, I'm guess you are at Dreamforce, right? So am I. Meet you at
we're at Dreamforce. We don't have any official presence, but I have 4 wonderful fellow colleagues who will be swarming, and we'll be at the analyst. Our analyst team will be there too. So
that's great. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you, Vernon, at Dreamforce. And for anybody tuning in, reach out to Vern or me on LinkedIn, and then we can definitely go from there. See you somewhere near Moscone next week.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care.
Good day, everybody.
Bye.